After meeting together in order to deliberate and decide, the committee has resolved to grant the BBVA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Award in the Social Sciences category in its 14th edition to Mark Granovetter. Mark Granovetter is probably the most eminent economic sociologist in the world. He was selected as a citation laureate by Thomson Reuters in 2014, and his work currently has over 160,000 citations. His substantial reputation rests on a select set of highly influential articles, all of which represent significant scientific advances that are relevant not only to sociology and economics, but also to social psychology, political science, communication, marketing, and computer science. His 1973 article, The Strength of Weak Ties, is recognized as the most widely cited paper in the social sciences and presents an account of how the outcomes of an individual depend on the structure of the individual's large social network. By incorporating previously ignored, seemingly weak connections as sources of social capital, Granovetter provided a theory and methods to study social relations beyond small groups while retaining the ability to explain micro-level outcomes. Granovetter's innovative perspective is the foundation of contemporary economic sociology. Although some economic actions can be understood in traditional economic terms as people working rationally toward well-defined personal goals, much human behavior is harder to fit into that simplistic individualistic framework. Many of the techniques Granovetter pioneered are now widely used across the social sciences and include sampling methods that capitalize on weak ties. The interdisciplinary implications of his theoretical and methodological work make Mark a stunning candidate for a Frontiers of Knowledge Award.
Could you define the field of economic sociology and how it has contributed to the two disciplines which it joined together?
Yes. Well, the field of economic sociology is the sociological study of the economy. By the economy, we mean the usual production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services as people define them. And the sociological approach is to consider people not only as individuals maximizing their own utility, but also as people who are influenced by norms and trust and power and social institutions. So that's been a big influence on sociology because it's revived the interest of sociologists in the economy. It has made some contribution to economics, although economists have been most likely to pick up the interest in social networks and perhaps a little slower to pay attention to trust, power, norms, and institutions. But I think that there is more of that going on, and I think that there is more possibility for the two disciplines to come together.
Could you explain what are the weak ties which you defined in the 1970s and their importance for economic sociology?
Yes, well, the importance of weak ties is that if you think about strong ties, the people that you are very close to, those people usually are also close to one another. And so if you talk to them, you won't learn anything that you didn't already learn from the people that you all talk to. But your weak ties connect you to networks that are outside of your own circle, and so they give you information and ideas that you otherwise would not have gotten. And so when it comes to questions like how people find new jobs, that becomes a very central question because you're more likely to get information about new jobs from people that you're only weakly tied to, your acquaintances, than you are from close friends because you already know pretty much what they know.
What socioeconomic, educational, Personal factors influence the social network to which individuals belong and whether they have more or less weak ties. Is it possible to learn or plan how to belong to a network and achieve those ties?
I think that people move through their career and they have either one job their whole career or they move through a series of jobs. And I think that people who stay in one job for their entire career will have a smaller network because they don't really get new acquaintances. If they move through a series of jobs, then each time they move to a new job, they have a new network, and that new network spreads out. And if they move again, then those people also move again. And so there's a kind of snowball effect, and they may end up with a very large network. Now, whether you can learn to make your network larger is an interesting question. There is a whole industry of networking seminars that supposedly teach people how to improve their networks. But I think that's really a little bit concerning because the people don't like to be invested in. If people think that the only reason you want to get to know them is because you'll get something from them, then they will resist that acquaintanceship and that network tie. And so the idea that you can invest in your network and make it larger, I think is problematic and unlikely to be successful.
Are weak ties still as important in the current context of companies and institutions which apply big data and algorithms to identify and capture talent?
According to the economists I know who study this subject, social ties, network ties, including weak ties, are still just as important as they ever were for people finding new jobs. And I think the reason is that no matter what kind of big data or artificial intelligence or machine learning that employers are able to draw on, they will never know as much about a person as someone who actually knows them and has worked with them and knows their personality and knows what they do in their spare time and how they approach problems. So there will always be more knowledge to be gotten from personal contacts of individuals than you can get from any kind of informatics.
Aside from the job market, in what other areas can your research be applied?
I think social ties and social networks are very important in many different aspects of the economy. One case is the case of business groups, such as the Keiretsu in Japan or the Chaebol in Korea or the Grupos Económicos in Spanish-speaking countries. And these are collections of firms that are legally independent but are tied together by networks of relationships, some of which are family relationships, some of which are weak ties. It's this mixture of weak ties and strong ties in a very complex network that knits these companies together in ways that are very important for the economies in which they occur. And the Chaebol in Korea and the Keiretsu in Japan and the Grupos Económicos in some Spanish-speaking countries really dominate their economies in ways that are very important.
Can you tell us about the book project you're currently working on?
Yes. So my book is called Society and Economy. I have just inverted the old title of Max Weber, which was Economy and Society, to place the emphasis on society. And the project is in 2 volumes. And 1 volume was published in 2017, and that is the more theoretical volume. And there I talk about the importance of networks and trust and power and norms and institutions in the economy. And all of those are very critical, and I try to develop some theoretical arguments with some empirical examples as to how that all works out. The second volume is on cases and applications, and that is in progress. I'm in the process of writing that now. At the moment, I'm engaged in the first chapter. The first chapter is on under what circumstances personal relationships matter in the economy. And it turns out that there are many different such circumstances, and to my surprise, there are many more kinds of personal relationships, types of personal relationships, than I had ever imagined. And so that has become a much more complicated chapter to write than I had expected. There will also eventually be chapters on corruption, on business groups, on corporate governance, and perhaps 1 or 2 other topics.